Hi, my name's Ollie and welcome to the Simple Rope Anchor Techniques podcast. This podcast has been created to fulfil one of the criteria of my qualifications module as part of my undergraduate degree at Bangor University. The following video offers a series of simple and easy techniques that can be used to create a secure anchor within a hill walking environment using just the rope. This podcast is aimed at anybody who requires straightforward tuition and sound examples of how to create a simple rope anchor in a mountainous environment. However, the main reason I've chosen to cover such simplistic rope techniques was due to the feedback that I received during my summer mountain leader training. As a climber, during my training I had a tendency to overcomplicate my rope anchors when tackling rock steps and other hazards where rope work was required. I'm sure this isn't a problem solely shared by myself, but by others as well. So as a consequence, I've researched and found 3 simple and easy rope anchor techniques that can be readily used on the hill, and they're very, very straightforward basically. I hope you find this podcast both enjoyable and useful. Hi, right, we're at the crag now. We've got 3 knots to tie. The first is going to be the figure of 8 knot with a locking knot. We've got our anchor point here, the boulder. We've given it a good check, given it a good push in all directions to see if it's safe and see if it's not moving. We've assessed that it's a nice big safe anchor and it's suitable to use. Now the first thing we need to do to tie the figure of 8 knot is we need to assess how much rope we need to complete the knot. So I've had a good look around the boulder and I've assessed that we need roughly about 4 metres worth of rope to complete the knot. So I've paid out 4 metres worth onto the floor. Now we're going to start the knot. What we do is make a loop like so. We wrap the shorter end of the rope around the loop like so. And I'm going to place the end of the rope through the loop. Make sure you keep hold of the loop, pull it through, and that's the beginning of the figure of 8 knot. So once you've got this, with the shorter end of the rope, you need to go around the boulder, now we can begin the knot. So what we do, get the end of the rope, and this end of the rope is going to touch the other rope where the knot is, and it's going to follow all the way through. So the 2 ropes are parallel. So the end of this rope is going to go through the top, parallel. So I'm going to go around the bottom and through. Let's go around the back. And it's going to go through the bottom. That's the finished figure of 8 knot. So it should look like that. All ropes are running parallel and it looks uniform in its design. There's no sort of loose loops anywhere. Nothing pointing out the sides, rope wise, and that's what it'll look like. Because we've got a lot of slack at the end of this rope now, it's completely safe to use this figure of 8 knot. We can give it a good pull, and it's not going to undo itself. If you want to make it really, really, really safe, you can add a stopper knot or a locking knot. The way we do that is we create, with the shorter end of the rope, 1 loop, like so. Another loop around the back. Then with the end of the rope, I'm going to place it through both loops, pull it down, give it a nice tight pull, and that's how it should look. With the locking knot, it's important to make sure it bites against the bottom of the actual figure of 8 knot, not down here. Okay, so the way you do that is as you're tightening it, you pull it up and it should bite against the bottom. The way you can tell the locking knot's been tied correctly is that both ropes will run parallel to each other out of the front of the knot. And that's how you tie the figure of 8 and locking knot. The second knot we're going to tie is the double overhand knot with a waist loop. The way you go about doing this knot is very similar to the figure of 8. We've wrapped the rope around the boulder, but we've needed roughly about 5.5 metres worth of rope, which is slightly more than the figure of 8 knot. You then have two ropes running parallel to each other at the bottom. You make a ring with your finger above the ropes, and you pull two loops through the ring you've made. You have one loop and two loops. The loops need to be the appropriate size for a waist loop, for whoever's doing the belaying. You then, like you would do with a single line, just make a simple overhand knot incorporating all four pieces of rope. So that will leave you, once you've tied it, again, one loop, two loops. The shorter end of the rope will be separate, and it'll be out on the outside. So you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, overhand knot, and two loops. What you then do is, step into the waist loop, if it requires tightening, you just adjust the double overhand knot so it creates a tighter loop, and that's you in a belaying stance ready. And that's how you tie the double overhand knot with waist loop. The third and final knot we're going to tie is the bowline with locking knot. The big advantage of using the bowline is that you need less rope than you would do with a double overhand knot on the waist loop or the figure of 8 knot. So I've looked at the boulder, I've wrapped the rope around, and I've used roughly 2.5 metres of rope. You start off by creating a loop, like so, the rope. The end of the rope then goes up through the loop and round, goes round the rope, and then it goes back through the loop, like so. There's your bowline. Now, the bowline under movement can come undone. So it's very important, unlike the figure of 8, to incorporate a locking knot. Now the locking knot, you place it where the ropes are parallel outside of the knot. So it doesn't go on that rope, it goes on that. The way you do the locking knot again, exactly the same as the figure of 8. You make one loop, you make another loop around the back, and you place the rope through both loops, and you draw the knot towards the back of the bowline. Now it's important to do this because as the bowline moves, it actually bites up against the locking knot. So if the locking knot was tied up here, it'd have a lot of movement, it could undo itself. So once you've got the locking knot tight against it, you've got a finished bowline.